In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Often, the most important things for us are those which we know already. But we don't manage to easily to remember them. There are many things which we know, but they remain on a conceptual level, somewhere in our consciousness, but not part of our daily life. Once I had to guide, I had to drive at night time in a road with thick fog, and there were no white lines to mark the lanes in the road. And near this time, and another time close to this time, I had driven in a road with white lines, and I thought, wow, what a difference it makes to have, you don't have the white lines, the side white lines. Because I couldn't see in front of me, I could only see very near to the car, and there was so much fog. It was and the first years I started driving here in Italy, I like to drive quickly. And I noticed that previously when there'd been two white lines to delineate the sides of the road, made a big difference because they gave me some kind of guideline. I could see when there was a curve, when it was straight. This is similar to that which is called the advice that we receive from our masters. The vows, advice, they're divided between advice and vows. The main difference is vows are vows usually refer to things that we should avoid, and the other things we should aspire to, advice. We find ourselves in life very often where we don't have a guideline on what to do. When there's a sunny day, if there are white lines on the road, we can drive in the same way. It doesn't make any difference. We have those days of clarity. We can see everything well, our mind is clear, joyous, balanced, and we can see things for what they are. And then we have other days of internal storms, then every now and again there's the tempest, then the days of internal fog. And when we're in these moments, we don't know how to react. And we can veer off the road. The accidents along the way doesn't happen on sunny days, but rather on these foggy, blurred days. The problem is once we've had the accident in a dark, foggy day, the car is a total write-off. And even if we wake up and there's a sunny day, we still have to pay the cost of the accident that took place on the foggy, dark day. How many times we've had made choices, have had reactions because we've had a moment of internal tempest. And then that passes, we come back to our senses, clear senses, but then it's too late. We've already done what we did. I think this happens to everybody. And for this reason, it's very important to have the white lines that delineate the road. Okay, you can't see everything, but at least you can see this. This is something that will keep you on track. This text that we're going to see now, and other texts which exists, serve this function to give us advice, which have the function of like a guideline, that which we do and we shouldn't do, and we should be careful of in every day. It's not a. I really like philosophy, but this is not a philosophical study. We can pass hours and hours to discuss the more philosophical part, the definitions, the classification, to look for examples, that don't fall into these definitions, but we can discuss and look, and it's great. But then there's everyday life. There are situations that we have to confront every day. When we find ourselves in front of some situations, it's hard to look to recall the definition of bodhichitta, the 22 classifications of bodhichitta. What speaks to us most strongly every day? Our habits. That's what speaks to us with greater force. This is, however, these are guidelines that help us to, when in these difficult moments, and help us to keep on track and not to fall into our normal habits. And therefore my advice is, when we look at this test, is possibly to memorize it if you can. It would be very nice to memorize it. If not all of it, at least a few verses that for you are most important at this time. Because when you have this dark moment, those verses that serve as keeping us on track, I can go until there, and this way I can't. I wanted to remind you of the context of this text. Is when I read a book, a text, especially within Buddhism, I like to imagine and to remember the context in which the text was transmitted. Above all, who gave these teachings was Atisha. His complete name was. He was one of the most important masters of India at the beginning of the 11th century, 1000 and something. He was born at the end of the 10th century and was active at the beginning of the 11th century. And Buddhism had already declined in India. There were two great centers of study in India. One was Valanda, very well known, and the other was Vikramashila. Vikramashila is where Atisha lived. Atisha was born in a noble family. He was a prince, but he rejected his titles and the title and the position of king, and decided to follow a path of spirituality. The first part of his life was dedicated to tantric practices, to develop a very high level of concentration, of control of subtle energies. He developed more. He became very good at this more mystical aspect of Buddhism, let's say. And then he entered afterwards more into the sutra path. He he went into the monastery. He became a monk, an ordinary monarch in the monastery. It was said that and when he was the administrator of the monastery, and people knew when he was coming because he had a huge bunch of keys which jangled. Didn't have digital badges. He had, in those days, it had great big keys. So he made the noise of the jangling keys so everybody knew when he was coming. So it's also good. It's good for people who act in administration in centres now that Atisha did. So it was said that with his powers of alchemy was able to keep all the monks alive during famine. He actually wrote, "Can I please not come back as administrator of a monastery?" Can I please not be reborn in the role of administrator or of management of a monastery? However, he worked for many years. And at a certain point, he was already a well-known master and had many disciples, but he understood his own limits. He managed to see his own limits where he arrived conceptually, but furthermore, what he was lacking in realizations, i.e., a deep realize a deep state of altruism, and so that he looked for somebody who really had realized bodhichitta and profound love, from whom to learn. It wasn't a question of explanation conceptually, but more a question of transmission and lineage and realization. So what strikes me is that that time Atisha chose to go and look for a master in Indonesia, because he heard from some part of this of this teacher, and he also, in his dreams and his visions, he had a clear message. He should go and find this person, and it said that he left with 200 disciples. And this reminds me a bit of Saint Francis. When I read the life of Saint Francis, at a certain point, Saint Francis, at the beginning of his spiritual life, he chose to go to the Middle East, to the Holy War. And there were many disciples who wanted to go with him in the boat. There wasn't space for everybody. So how did he choose who could go with him and who couldn't? Well, just because I'm this one, I'm this, and I should be able to go. Can we just imagine, let's say that we're going to have to, let's imagine that we have to choose 20 out of us 100. What did he do? He took a child that was passing. He said, "Go on, you choose 20 people." And this child chose randomly 20 people. And with Atisha, there were 200 disciples with Atisha, sorry. And took 13 months to cross the sea and to get to Sumatra. Once I worked with somebody who was a salesman in that sea. And I said, "Is it right that it took so long?" And he said, "Well, unfortunately, yes. Because those passages from India to Sumatra, there's a part where there are very strong currents that come backwards, and there are so many storms. It's very, very difficult sea to navigate, and it took them 13 very difficult months to get there. Once I got there, he goes to find this master, and he asks to be able to be near him every day, not in a formal way, to follow the teachings, but also to be near him every day. He was accepted, and the first teachings that he got was the first things he got was the ornament of clear realization, one of the most important texts that I had the opportunity to study, quite complex, which is the basis of what became known as Lamrim. Anyway, 12 years there, after 12 years there with the master, the political power at the time of this Buddhist kingdom, and there was the Islamic invasion, and Atisha came back to India. After a few years that Atisha had returned, he was invited to go to Tibet. Now I'm going to cut a long story short. In Tibet, there was Buddhism, but it was a bit confused in some ways. There were various traditions, things weren't clear. One of the kings wanted Buddhism to reflower. The only way, and the only way to do this was to bring a realized master, and he wanted to invite Atisha. And I'm thinking, wow, just think of it, inviting somebody from Tibet, from India. How they came to think of that, how the hell he knew of his existence. It's not as if he invited a master. He gave his life. He literally gave his, in the end he had to give his life. He was collecting funds because Tibet was seen like the land of barbers, wild people. India, and even in Tibetan it's called the land of nobles. To ask the monastery in India that their most important teacher should go into Tibet, where Buddhism was already in decline, was a bit too much. A bit like asking, let's ask, we have our own monastery. Let's imagine that some tiny isolated place asks for our most important teacher. What do we say? Do we say, okay, yeah, take him? No, we say we need him here. But so in order to show Tibet, to show that they were serious with their invitation, they had to show that they had the means to take care of him and the resources to create the conditions to give teachings well. And the way to do this at the time was to make an offer. So they had made a collection of gold. In this collection there were lots of little kingdoms. And Geshe, if I remember correctly, the king went to collect funds from all the different kingdoms because it was a very expensive journey also. At a certain point, he collected a lot of gold, and then he arrived in a kingdom which appeared friendly, but once he got there, they imprisoned him, saying they were against Buddhism. I don't want Buddhism to flourish in Tibet. And therefore they imprisoned him, and his brother had to help save him. I can't remember if it was the brother or the cousin. Oh, it's his nephew. Well, it's some things I don't give attention to, but anyway. He goes there. I will release the king if you give me his weight in gold. So now the fundraising campaign changes the object. It's no longer to invite Atisha, but to save the life of the king. In the end, he manages to find all the gold, He brings the gold, and but the king says, okay, there's enough here for everything except for the head. If you want, I'll give you the body of the king without the head. This wasn't a joke. They talked to each other, and the king, who was imprisoned, my life is, I've just given it, I've already lived my life. There's nothing more important to me than Buddhism being able to grow in Tibet. Therefore, please take the gold that you have collected to save my life and bring it in India. Invite Atisha, and I will offer, and it will be recorded in history that I offered my life. And this at the end was the, and that was the clear indication to the abbot of the monastery that he should release Atisha, that Atisha should go. And he said to Atisha, the choice is yours. Atisha, he made a Tara retreat, and during the retreat, he had a vision. It said that the vision that he had was in front of a big statue of Tara, which is found in the temple of Bodh Gaya, where Buddha reached enlightenment. And going to this temple, there's a little temple on the left, where a dark little temple. In there's a Tara statue. It said that in front of that statue, it said that he had the Tara who spoke to him. And the message was, if you go to Tibet, your vita will be shorter, but it will be of more benefit to Dharma. And so he accepts to go to Tibet. But at this point, the abbot accepts that Atisha go to Tibet with one condition, that in 2 or 3 years, he comes back. So the nephew of the imprisoned king gives his word that he will bring him back. And Atisha goes. He gives 3 years of teachings. Very nice. It's said that when he arrived in Tibet, one of the first places was the monastery, a very important monastery of Sangye, which is still there, which is made of lots of little rooms dedicated to different meditations of various classes of Tantra and Sutra. And when he arrived in Tibet, he saw that there were masters and practitioners. But why did you invite me here? What am I doing here? You have all the teachings you need. But when they take him to this big temple, he starts to see. But they had a little separated room for each practice. At a certain point, he said, okay, now I understand my task. You have the teachings, but you live them as if practice were separate from the other. Well, every aspect of the teachings of Buddha, they each support each other to keep for the same path, a common path. So he started teaching. After 3 years, he tries to come back, and there's a text which I've undertaken the commitment to translate, which I'm going to take this commitment again, this text in which Atisha was about to leave after this period of 3 years. And that moment, before he's asked to give a last teaching before he leaves. He gives marvelous teachings, and this advice, and this is what we have transcribed. But near Nepal, there was a war going on, so he couldn't go straight into India. So he said, please take this text called Chapchundra, which means the light which brightens the path of enlightenment. He takes this text and goes there. I've come, but I can't keep my commitment because there's a war going on. when the abbot takes the text, Landrum, this text, and reads it, he's so struck. Because what happened is that, as the abbot himself said, if Atisha had stayed in India, he would never have given these teachings. Because in India, Buddhism was part of the culture. And therefore, I wouldn't have taken all the teachings and put them in all practical order on how to apply the teachings and how to walk internally towards enlightenment. He took all the paths and described the path step by step, which had never been done before. He said if Atisha had stayed in India, this would have never happened. So it was of great benefit, and which often happens when when a tradition arrives in a region where it doesn't exist yet, so they have to, in inverted commas, reinvent themselves and to give a different key and a different interpretation, with the emphasis on the individual practice. And from this, the abbot said there's no longer the commitment for him to come back, so he can stay there. He can stay there as long as he wants. So Atisha stayed for another 12 years until the end of his life. And these years transmitted many teachings, and that was the basis for the main lineages which exist today. Sakya and Gelupa, principally. And whatever his main disciples was the Drompompom, this lay person. They had a fantastic relationship, a deep respect. To read their conversations is wonderful. Apart from the formal teachings, between him and his disciple, there were moments of conversation. It's compiled in a book, which the Dharma and the father and son, Kadampa, which has been translated in English called the Book of Kadam. The main part of this book, the transcriptions of these conversations between Atisha and this lay disciple. They were effectively heart-to-heart advice from Atisha, one of the most illustrious figures, most realized that has been in the history of Tibetan Buddhism, in Buddhism in general, which talks from heart to heart to his main disciple. And we have access to the summary of each of these conversations, because Don Drompa asked a question in each of these conversations, and at the end, a brief summary was made of the conversation. The summary was often the summary was dictated by Drompa, and Atisha corrected it if necessary, but it was just written by both of them. Now we're going to read it. Let's imagine Atisha who talks to Don Drompa as if he were talking to us directly and gives his deepest advice. The jewel garland of the Bodhisattva. In English, the jewel garland of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is he or her who profoundly desires as the most important thing to help others, and doesn't find any way to do it other than to develop his or her own proper qualities. A bodhisattva is someone not necessarily. It could be a non-human being. There are many stories of animal bodhisattvas, but a bodhisattva is somebody who deeply desires to help others, a very deep state of love and compassion, where his priority is to develop internally, to be of service, to help others. So it's not that I want to reach. It's not that I'm going to reach enlightenment and then I'll help others. Rather, it's I really want to help others, but the only way I can do it is to reach enlightenment and become a Buddha myself, because I can't. Otherwise, I'm of not much use. I can't guide others in a place that I've never been to. Therefore, I have to develop myself these qualities. The jeweled garland of the Bodhisattva, there are different qualities that accompany, that adorn the Bodhisattva. This path of life, where one makes the priority to develop inner qualities to help others, there are various aspects of conduct which help to follow this path. Therefore, the jewel garland, are in fact the qualities that one applies during the path. Homage, or I prostrate to great compassion. Homage, or I prostrate to my gurus, to my path, to the masters. Homage, or I prostrate to the divinities, deities who inspire devotion. Let's start with the first one. Homage to great compassion. Above all, when we look at Buddhist literature, the great majority, not I won't say all because I don't have enough knowledge to say all, but from what I can remember, practically all the texts, the sutra and Buddha, they always start with homage to. They pay homage to. This has many functions. If you start as a sign of humility, one starts paying homage, also as a way to remember, each one of us, that in the path, first of all, one needs to be guided. Therefore, I pay homage, because I'm also guided. This is part of the... It's not like I'm here, I understand everything. Homage to the great compassion. The great compassion, love, is said, described by Nagarjuna and later Chandrakirti, entering the middle path. It's described as compassion is like water. Compassion and love is like water, which is important at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And love and water, which allows the seed to sprout, and the water which allows the sprout to grow and become a tree, and the water which allows the tree to give fruit. Similarly, it's the love and the compassion, two aspects of the same thing, really, which allow for the seed to sprout. What allows us to enter the path towards enlightenment is love towards ourselves and the love towards other people, which is called formally as renunciation of bodhichitta, the so-called renunciation, this certainty to be able to get out of suffering, which we spoke about this morning, the determination to develop our own qualities and reach a state of peace, is a form of love towards ourselves. And when we direct when we direct this to the other and expand our selfishness, it's altruism, which encompasses other people. So it's our love which allows us to enter into the path of enlightenment. When we say at the end, may the mind become Dharma, from a mundane mind, we develop a desire to a spiritual objective. When the Dharma becomes the path, when I have this determination to get out of samsara and the love which to reach enlightenment for the benefit of others, the so-called bodhichitta, that's when we effectively enter on the path, and Dharma becomes the path. And that's what helps us to get onto the path, enables us to get onto the path, is love and compassion. What is it that gives the force? It's the love and compassion gives us the energy to keep going. It's like the petrol that keeps us going, gives us the power to keep going. Once we've become Buddhas, what is the force that allows Buddhas to continue to act and they desire the benefit of other beings? It's there again, it's love and compassion. So like our water is the water which allows this seed to sprout and the sprout to transform into a tree. Therefore, the same way, water allows the tree to keep bearing fruit. But first of all, we pay homage to love and compassion. Second, we pay homage to our own masters. Nam is plural, more than one. Literally, I pay homage to the gurus. I pay homage to the spiritual guides. All spiritual guides. As it's been put in the plural, it means all of them. I'm a bit kind of nitpicky with translations, but I pay homage to the masters when I read the conversations. Who wants to read the full conversations behind these verses? You should read the book of Kadam, which I refer to. It's 500 pages long, which is written in a rather ancient language from the 11th century, but very nice. When we talk about spiritual guide, Atisha describes to Drumpompa all his masters. He describes what they're like. He remembers each one of them and the name of each one. And he pays homage to each and every one of them. Atisha, at the beginning, he pays homage to each and every one of his, to all his masters, to the 5 Dhyana Buddhas, to every teaching, Tantra and Sutra, and the qualities of each one. Therefore, he pays homage to each of these masters, and he concludes at the end by paying homage to spiritual guides, to the gurus, referring to his own masters. When we read this, I pay homage to all the spiritual guides, or I prostrate. Chaksal means I prostrate. Literally, the word chaksal, more than I prostrate, means I make requests with my hands. Chak means hands. Sel, to ask, means chak means to a seal. What does it require? The seal, the state between method and wisdom, love and compassion. And love and compassion and wisdom, when we unite our hands and we prostrate, the fact of uniting our hands represents the union of masculine and feminine, and represents the union of method and wisdom, and represents requesting to be able to, requesting to be able to reach the state of Buddha, the state of union where we perceive reality in a consistent way, in that, when we prostrate and we put our hands together, it's not as simple paying homage. It's very clear every time that I pay homage and I prostrate in front of the Buddhas, in front of my masters. I'm also paying homage to my own potential, which is the only reason because they guide me. They guide me so that I can become the same as them. So if it weren't possible to reach this state, there wouldn't be any reason to have this interaction. Therefore, we pay homage to our masters. When we recite, we try to remember our own spiritual masters, our own masters, and we pay homage to each one of them without making distinctions. Oh, this one, no, maybe this one more, this one less. To all of them, to all the people who have taught us, who have transmitted, who've guided us. We pay homage with a lot of respect. Once one of my masters said, if I asked you how much money you have in your pocket, you'd be able to tell me. But if I were to ask you how many masters, very few people would be able to say. But it's really important to have clarity on this, all your masters. Remembering one thing. In our path, we spoke this morning. It's not enough to have knowledge. It's very important to have that there's an uninterrupted lineage. What makes me to be, what ensures that I am in contact with the uninterrupted lineage, that I'm part of it? It's not enough to receive the transmission. It's important, but not sufficient. The most important thing is a deep tie of trust and love which we develop towards our spiritual guides, and which they had in turn with their spiritual guides, and going back through all the masters and their masters. We connect with our love, which our trust, most importantly, which we have towards our own spiritual guides. Those who are there, alive, and those who are not. Therefore, I prostrate towards all the gurus. I pay homage to all the gurus. I pay homage to all the deities who inspire devotion. In particular, Atisha referred to 4 Buddhas in this case, which are called Kadamhashi, the 4 divinities of Kadampa, which Buddha Shakyamuni, Tara Verde, Avalokiteshvara, and Myowa. Myowa is a manifestation of Bodhichitta, a bit like Vajrapani. These are the four principal practices which we can see in where there's a Atisha in the temple on the wall. If we look above, there's a mandala which is a bit different from the others, with many levels. Between the red, this is the mandala of the 16 Kadampa drops in the center. There are Nyoa, Tara Verde, Green Tara, Buddha Shakyamuni, and Avalokiteshvara, Green Tara.
Che Atisha insegnava e trasmetteva.
Mm.
Quello che succede, che cosa
What
sono queste
happens?
divinità?
Who are these divinities of
Ci sono due aspetti.
deities of faith? There are two aspects.
Un aspetto
One aspect is
è quello di esseri che
they are
hanno
beings
raggiunto
who
lo
have
stato che noi chiamiamo lo
achieved
stato
the
di Buddha.
state
Non
of
è che
Buddhahood
quando un essere
themselves.
raggiunge
When
l'illuminazione
a being reaches
va in una
Buddhahood
sorta di vacanza e non entra più in contatto con nessuno.
and going off into some kind of vacation land,
Un
holiday
essere quando
land,
raggiunge lo
away
stato di
from
Buddha
sentient beings,
continua ad interagire
Buddhas
ed essere in
continue
contatto con gli altri.
to interact and to
Okay?
be interact and be in contact with
Quello che
beings.
accade con
What
questo
happens is with
è che da
this,
questo
that from
momento
this moment,
qualcuno chiederebbe, ma
somebody would
quindi
ask,
sono come dei
therefore,
dei?
they're like gods then?
No,
No,
sono
they're
principalmente come
principally
esseri
beings
che
who
interagiscono con gli
interact
altri,
with others,
manifestandosi nei
manifesting
modi in cui noi
themselves
siamo capaci di interagire,
in ways that
cercando di, come posso dire,
trying to, how can I say,
adattarsi alle nostre realtà.
to adapt to our
Però
reality,
viene descritto
but
nel seguente modo.
it's described in this following
Immaginiamo un
way.
segnale
Let's
radio,
imagine a radio signal.
ok? Se noi abbiamo un segnale radio,
If we have radio
può essere
signals,
molto
they can
forte,
be very
arriva
strong,
a tutti nello stesso
and
momento
it
e nello
gets
stesso
to
modo.
everybody in the same way,
Ma
right?
se noi riusciamo a
But if we
sentire quella musica o
could,
meno, da che cosa dipende?
if we, sorry,
Se noi riusciamo a sentire quella
if we're
musica
able
o
to
meno,
hear,
da che cosa dipende?
able to hear the music
Dalla
or
forza
not,
del segnale
it's
o se siamo sintonizzati?
the force of the signal, if we're
Noi
tuned in or
siamo
not.
sintonizzati.
We have to be tuned in, right?
Quello che accade, che Buddha
So
Shakyamuni
what
ha
happens is
trasmesso anche
Buddha
il
Shakyamuni,
contatto, ha creato come se fosse questa
it's as if
introduzione,
he
questo
introduced
contatto
this
con
contact
diversi di questi
with
esseri
different of
sacri,
these
detti Buddha,
sacred beings,
che
so-called Buddhas,
possono interagire e
who
aiutarci nel
can
nostro percorso.
interact
Voi
in our
vedete che
path.
nella nostra
When I see in
cultura
our
è un
culture,
po'
it's a
difficile
bit
da
difficult
connetterci
to
su
connect
questo,
with this
perché ci passa un po'
because
un'idea dei dei,
it gives us an
ci
idea of
passa
a
un po'
kind of
un'idea di
gods,
divinità in
of
quanti dei in
divinities.
qualche modo, è un po'...
It's
Io ho trovato molto spesso un po' di fatica di riuscire a
I
trasmettere con
found
chiarezza
I found
che
it
cosa
difficult
significa.
here to
E
describe
allo
what
stesso tempo,
these beings
ognuno
are,
di
but
questi
the thing
vengono chiamati yidam,
they're also called
sono come
yidams,
dei
these deities.
sistemi
They're
complessi
like
di pratica
complex systems
per crescere
of practices
spiritualmente,
to
per andare
grow
verso l'illuminazione.
spiritually towards enlightenment.
Per esempio,
For example,
quando noi parliamo di
when we
Buddha,
talk
Dharma
about
e
Buddha, Dharma,
Sangha,
and Sangha,
nell'interno del
in
Tantra
inside
si parla di Guru,
Tantra, we talk about Guru,
Yidam
Yidam,
ed Akedakini,
and Dakini,
o Virya.
or
Che
Virya.
cosa vuol dire questo?
What does that
Che
mean? It
il
means
Buddha viene
the
rappresentato dal
Buddha is
Guru,
represented by
il
the
Dharma
Guru,
dal
the
Yidam.
Dharma by the
Quindi in
Yidam.
questo caso
In
queste
this case,
cosiddette divinità
these
di
divinities of
meditazione
meditation
rappresentano in realtà,
represent
sono in
really,
realtà
in fact, they
il
are
percorso completo, il
a
sistema
complete
completo
path
di pratica
of
per
practices
raggiungere
towards
l'illuminazione.
a system to
Okay?
reach
Quindi
enlightenment.
Atisha rende omaggio
Atisha
al
gives,
sentiero,
pays
rende
homage
omaggio
to these
qui alle pratiche
these
in sé,
practices,
rende omaggio al Dharma
to
e
Dharma.
rende omaggio
He
anche
renders
ai Buddha
homage.
che
He pays homage
rappresentano il Dharma.
to to the
Okay?
Buddha, to Buddha and the gurus who
E
represent him.
per me è molto chiaro il
It's
fatto che
very
noi
clear that
riusciamo a comprendere, riusciamo a capire
we can understand
quello che
that
tramite la
which
nostra
our
cultura,
own
la nostra
culture
mentalità
and our
siamo capaci di vedere di più.
mentality allows us
E ci sono certi
to
aspetti che per i
understand. There
quali
are
cerchiamo inevitabilmente, siamo
certain things we're
influenzati
still influenced by
dalla nostra mentalità, come
our
abbiamo detto prima.
mentality, as we said this
Questo
morning.
aspetto
And
quando
this
si parla
aspect, when we
delle
talk about
divinità, del
divinities,
Buddha, degli
Buddhas,
Idam,
Yidams,
eccetera,
etc.,
è qualcosa
is
che,
something that,
ripeto,
I repeat,
trovo una certa
I find
difficoltà
difficult
nella nostra
to explain
cultura di
in this
riuscire a
culture to,
connettersi e
and
di
also
spiegare in un
to
modo che
explain and
riusciamo
to
a
create a
connetterci
connection with these
come secondo me sia il modo giusto.
in the way I believe
Okay?
is
Perché
right.
ricordiamoci che
Let's
Yidam,
remember
per
that a
esempio, quando
Yidam,
si
for
va a
example,
prendere
when
l'iniziazione di
we take
Tara
the
o
initiation of Tara,
Yamantaka, esistono
Yamantaka,
queste pratiche,
and these
eccetera,
practices,
sono degli
they're the
strumenti, sono dei
instruments, the
sistemi completi
complex
di
systems
pratica
to
per
practices
seguire il sentiero
to
dell'illuminazione.
follow the path to enlightenment.
Okay? Quindi, solo per
Therefore,
mettere chiarezza,
just to
sono
be
delle
clear,
divinità che
it's not
vanno lì a
divinities
chiedere
to whom we ask for help. That's not it.
aiuto, ok? Però allo stesso tempo
But at the same
esistono
time,
degli esseri
there are beings
che hanno raggiunto
that
lo
have
stato
reached a
del
state
Buddha
of Buddhahood, so-called Buddhahood,
e che continuano a
and who
interagire con noi.
continue
Non è che non
to
possono
react.
più
It
interagire.
doesn't mean that they
E
can't
noi
interact
interagendo
anymore.
con loro riceviamo anche
We
dei grandi
interacting with them,
benefici.
we
Ok?
gain great benefit.
E questo è un punto perché ogni tanto
And
noi
this is a
crediamo il
point.
buddismo è una sola filosofia di vita.
We sometimes say
E questo
Buddhism is just
aspetto
a,
di connettersi
a
col
life
sacro ogni
philosophy,
tanto viene tolto,
and the aspect of the
viene
connection with
messo
the
da parte.
sacred is often ignored and put aside.
Il
But the
sacro,
sacred,
inteso come
in
esseri
understood as
sacri,
beings,
esseri che hanno
sacred beings
raggiunto
who have
questo stato e stare
reached
alla
this
loro
state,
presenza, interagire con loro,
a
creare
state
questa
of Buddhahood, and
connessione,
being
ci
in their
aiutano
presence and
molto.
interacting with actually help us
Questa è una
on the
delle
path.
parti
This is
che
one of
lo
the
ritroviamo
parts.
principalmente negli insegnamenti del Vajrayana, cosiddetto Tantra.
This is what we see principally in the path of Vajrayana.
Dopo di questo,
After this,
Atisha comincia con
Atisha
i
starts with
consigli veri e propri.
the real
Il
advice.
primo che
The
comincia
first one
dice
says,
Tenzon tamche pangche shin drublaneden chesu cha. Nimu leva rafang shin taktu tsundru veva chafki. Abbandona
put
ogni
aside
dubbio
all
ed
doubt and
esitazione. Tenzon
hesitation.
tamche pancha shin. Abbandona ogni dubbio, effettivamente. In
Abandon
tibetano
all
usa la parola
doubt.
tenzon,
They use
non ci sono
tesson.
due, è una cosa sola.
It's just one
Quindi
thing.
abbandona ogni incertezza.
Just get rid of all
Perché il
uncertainty.
dubbio può
Because
essere diviso in
doubt,
dubbi positivi, dubbi
it can be
negativi.
positive,
Io ho
negative
il dubbio
doubts,
su questo o quell'altro. Poi abbandona ogni
but it
incertezza.
means abandon all uncertainty
Giubla nede cesuccia e
and
delizia
take
con
delight
serietà
in
nella pratica.
earnest practice
E pratica con determinazione.
and practice with
Giubla
determination.
nede cesuccia. Pratica con gioia, deliziati con serietà nella tua pratica.
So practice with
Questo che cosa vuol dire?
in an earnest manner,
Il primo
seriously.
consiglio che
The
Atisha ci
first
dà
advice he
è,
gives,
prima di
first of
tutto,
all,
abbi chiarezza di che cosa vuoi.
be clear about what you want
E
and
segui una strada.
follow a path.
Perché
Decide
magari
what you
noi
want.
sì,
Because if
voglio
we're,
uscire da
yeah, I'd
samsara,
like to get
sì,
out of
però ma chissà
samsara, but
quando, non
yeah,
lo so.
well, I don't know if I'm
Magari sì,
sure.
magari
Maybe, well,
no,
I don't
sì,
know.
però.
Yeah, but
Cosa succede quando
what
abbiamo delle
happens when we have
incertezze?
these uncertainties?
Non mettiamo la nostra energia
We
piena.
don't put all our energy into it.
Vuoi fare quella cosa?
Do you want
Sì,
to do
la
this?
voglio,
Yes, I
sì,
want,
però,
but,
sai, magari,
you know,
quando,
maybe.
no, non è una
No, it
cosa.
doesn't work.
Quindi prima di
So
tutto
first of all,
dobbiamo
we
avere
must have
certezza di che
absolute
cosa
clarity
vogliamo,
about what we want,
chiarezza di dove vogliamo mettere la nostra
where we
energia,
want to put
perché
our
la
energy,
vita passa in
because
fretta.
life passes really quickly.
Quando abbiamo visto,
When we
siamo
have seen
diventati,
that we've become,
non dico neanche vecchi, siamo morti.
I won't say old, I'd say even dead.
Scusate se sono un po'
I'm
così,
sorry if
non
I'm a
voglio
bit
dire
direct.
drastico,
I don't want to be
però è la
tragic,
realtà.
but that's the truth, no?
La vita passa a una velocità
Life,
spaventosa
life passes at a frightening rate.
e noi, ci sono
And
tante tradizioni
there are so
spirituali, ci
many
sono tanti
traditions,
sistemi, eccetera,
systems, etc.
però quando noi
But
troviamo
when we
qualcosa dove
find
vediamo
something
gioia di beneficio,
that is something which
mettiamo
is
la
a
nostra
benefit for us, let's
energia
just give
e
all our
andiamo.
energy. Let's walk. Let's go
Ci
with it.
mettiamo lì e
Let,
andiamo.
let's go. Let's
Non
do it.
stiamo lì, ah,
We don't there
magari
saying,
volevo
yes, maybe.
vedere. Una volta ero in
Once
Nepal
I was in
e un
Nepal
ragazzo,
and
un
some
amico,
guy, a friend, came up to
venne e
me.
mi disse, guarda
He
Lama,
said, Lama,
c'è un
there's
maestro di
a
un'altra
master from
tradizione
another tradition
che darà
who give
un'iniziazione, un
initiation
insegnamento unico che lo darà
only
solo a
once,
te
just once.
questa volta nella sua vita, non lo
Once, the
ripeterà
only
più
time
la
in his life,
seconda
he'll never
volta
do it
che lo
again.
darà e non darà tante
It's the
volte questi
second time
insegnamenti.
he's
Vuoi
done it in all
venire a
his life. Do you
riceverlo?
want to come and receive it? I said, no.
Ed è rimasto male, ma
And
perché?
he
Cosa
said,
c'è
why?
contro questa
What have you got
tradizione?
against it?
Assolutamente
He was
nulla.
a bit upset. I said, nothing.
Però mi sembra una
But it
profonda
just
mancanza di
seems
rispetto dalla mia
like a deep
parte
respect on my part
andare a
to
ricevere
go and get
insegnamenti come
teachings from,
collezionare le figurine.
as if they were like some kind of little
Io
figures.
ho già ricevuto
I
tanto
just,
in cui io mi ritrovo che non riesco a mettere in pratica tutto.
I've received so much that I can't even put all of it into practice.
Perciò con tutto
So
il
why,
rispetto,
with all
rimango
respect,
dove sono.
I stay where I am.
E questo non vuol dire che
And this
un'altra
doesn't mean that another
tradizione non sia
tradition
valida.
isn't valid. Well, this means that I have enough for me, and that I want to practice. I don't want to be Buddhist, to tell you the truth. I want to become a Buddha, not to be Buddhist. I don't know if that's clear, the difference. It's one of the objectives. It's one of the objectives of Buddhists to become a Buddha. But beyond this, we must have to be clear about what we want. It's not something obvious or simple. It's nearly more dangerous for who is just on the path for a long time, for he who has just arrived. Because for who, the person who's arriving now, who's approaching Buddhist teachings now, why do I have to go there? And why do I have to spend the whole weekend sitting down in an uncomfortable cross-legged position to listen to somebody talking all day? Why? Really? Or I get some benefit. What am I doing it for? Therefore, there is a reason why. This reason is that it has to come from an objective. We have to allow ourselves to dream. And unfortunately, the times in which we live in, a recurring fact is the difficulty to dream, to envisage, because maybe we get into Buddhism to resolve temporary problems, but we don't allow ourselves to dream, to going way beyond that. But it's really important to believe, not to believe blindly, but to give a deep objective and not to have doubts, and to follow with determination. When I say it's almost more dangerous for the person who follows, has been following Buddhism for a long time, because as a person, at time, it's a moment in which one enters, falls in love with Buddhism and asks lots of questions, and then at a certain point, the person starts to identify themselves as Buddhists, but I change certain things in my life, but I don't put myself. The objective becomes to be a good Buddhist rather than to become a Buddha. I don't know if that's clear, the difference. Their objective is not to be a good Buddhist. I'm sorry if I say like this. I don't care if you're Buddhist or not. I couldn't care less. But I'm expressing it a bit extremely to give my message. We're not here to be Buddhist. We're here to become Buddhas. We're here to develop love, wisdom, to reach this state of peace. That's why we're here. We have to have the total determination and clarity, the point which we discussed this morning, that my happiness doesn't depend on external factors. Are we convinced of this or not? I don't know. For example, when there's the taking refuge ceremony, one of the commitments is not to take refuge in others. We're not talking about in other religions. That's not what we're talking about. Principally, what is the principal, the main competitor we have? The main competitor that we have to Buddhism is not the Christian or whatever other religious tradition, but it's it's taking refuge in an idealized version of the external world and believe that we can attain contentment with acquiring more materially. But am I convinced that I'm convinced? Am I convinced that I'm my own protector, my own enemy? Am I really convinced of this? Am I convinced of this or not? Because if I'm not convinced of this, I have to say.
Quindi devo tornare
Therefore, I
indietro.
have to go back.
Perché prima di cominciare
Because
quel
before we
viaggio,
start a
dobbiamo
journey,
essere
we have
certi
to be
di
sure
dove
of
vogliamo
where we want to
andare.
go.
Questa è la prima cosa.
That's the first
Se
thing.
noi immaginiamo che
If we
partiamo
imagine
per un
that
viaggio,
let's imagine we're going on a
ma non
trip,
sappiamo bene dove vogliamo andare.
but we don't know where we want to go.
Ah, voglio andare in
Maybe we
Puglia.
want to go in Puglia.
Sto partendo, che
I'm
bella
leaving.
Puglia.
Oh, how lovely Puglia
A
is.
un certo
At a
punto
certain
dico
point,
magari la Sardegna.
maybe I'll go to Sardinia.
Ok, vado verso la
Let's go
Sardegna.
towards
Ah
Sardinia.
no, ma sai, i Dolomiti sono
No, oh,
meravigliosi.
but the
Ok,
Dolomites are
vado
great.
verso le Dolomiti.
Okay, let's
Poi sto
go. Then I go
arrivando
towards the
lì, dico,
Dolomites.
ah, ma magari sai, quasi
Well,
quasi,
maybe
sono
I'll.
arrivato qua, vado
Hey,
in
you know
Croazia.
what? I think I'll go to Croatia.
Cosa
Croatia, sorry.
succede? Alla fine rimaniamo in Reggio Emilia.
So what happened? Then we go to Reggio Emilia,
Avanti,
backwards and
indietro,
forwards.
avanti, indietro, non sa mai dove andare.
And we don't
Non
know
è
where to
casa
go.
sua. Sono tutti posti meravigliosi.
They're all wonderful
l'importante è arrivarci.
places, but the important thing is to arrive.
Ma
It's
per
to get there.
arrivarci uno deve avere la certezza di cosa
But to
vuole.
do that, you have to be clear about what you
Perciò
want.
abbandonare
Therefore,
i dubbi.
therefore we have to abandon every
C'è una
doubt.
breve storia su questo.
There's a nice story about this. Let me just take this moment to tell you. They're two connected stories. One is of a master who
Aveva tanti discepoli.
he had many
Un
disciples.
giorno stava partendo per un viaggio.
He was leaving for a journey.
Questa prima parte della
And the
storia è
first part
uguale
of
a
the
tutte e
story,
due, quindi lo racconto una volta.
so it's common to both stories.
Questi
I'll
due
only say it
maestri
once.
si
They're both
trovavano che stavano partendo per un viaggio.
two masters were about to
E,
leave for a
e tra,
journey.
anticamente, quando i
And in the
maestri
past, when
partivano, i
masters
discepoli si
left,
mettevano in fila,
all the disciples put
stavano
themselves
lì,
in a
erano
line.
accompagnati, stare presenti per
They were
20
present as
minuti,
they
stavano lì nel
left
villaggio mentre stava per
to
andare
pay
via, poi
homage as they
ritornavano,
left.
facevano la fila di nuovo.
And when they came back, they
Stavano lì
also
tutti in fila aspettando e mentre il
put
maestro
themselves in a line
passava, un
to
discepolo viene e
welcome
chiede,
them back.
maestro,
One
mi
of the
puoi dire la
disciples
pratica
asked,
della mia vita?
"Can you tell me the practice of my
C'è il
life?"
peggior momento per chiedere
If there's not the worst moment to ask a master when he's just
in quel
about to
momento
leave
che
for a
cosa c'è in
journey.
testa il maestro? Devo
So,
partire per il mio viaggio.
so the master at
Sta
that
lì
moment
pensando
is
di andare in
busy
porto,
thinking
non è
about
che
where
gli
he's
dice
going.
per
It's not the
chiedere.
moment to give advice on
In uno dei
practice.
casi,
In one
il
of the
discepolo
cases,
che
the
ha chiesto
disciples
era uno che
asked
non era molto intelligente.
who wasn't very intelligent.
Veniva un po' preso in giro da
He
altri,
was made
non
fun of.
capiva mai
He didn't
l'insegnamento,
understand the
era molto
teachings.
determinato, ma
He
non
was
capiva.
very determined, but he didn't understand anything.
A questo punto il
At this
maestro gli
point, the
dice,
master
qual è la
said,
pratica della mia
when the
vita? E lui,
disciples said,
prendendoli un po' in giro,
asked, "What's
gli
the
dice,
practice of my life?"
medita finché ti cresca una corda in testa.
And the master said, "Well, meditate
E
until
era
you
una
get
presa
a
in giro,
horn growing on your head." Okay, he was making fun of the guy.
E un altro fa la
And
stessa
another
domanda.
made the same question.
E il maestro gli chiede, ma
And the
guarda, gli
master
dice, il tuo naso
he
si
said to the guy,
assomiglia a un rudra.
"Your nose is like a
Rudra è
rudra.
un seme che
It's
somiglia
like
a
a seed
rudrascia,
in India,
che fanno
from
anche i mali.
Rudrasha, that they make malas
Questo è
from.
un seme
A
grande,
very,
scuro, molto molto
very
potente.
dark,
E dice,
porous
sì, questo signore qua c'ha il naso grande, molto
uh,
veloce, scuro. Quindi
bead
lui
full of
dice,
holes.
qual è il
So,
mantra della pratica della mia vita? Lui lo guarda, li prende in
because
giro e dice,
he already,
il tuo naso si assomiglia a un
so he
rudra, il
already
tuo
had a
naso
big
si
nose.
assomiglia a un rudra.
So
Però
when he
guarda,
asked for the mantra, the master said,
perché
"Okay."
i mantra sono anche in sanscrito.
He gave the mantra of your
Succede che il primo
nose is
maestro
like a
torna da quel
rudrasha.
viaggio,
So when he came back,
non vede più quel
he
discepolo
didn't
lì.
see that disciple.
Vabbè,
He said, "Okay,
sarà, prima o poi arriverà.
he's not here, but sooner or
Passano
later he'll come."
3 anni,
2 or
qualcosa
3
succede,
later,
3 anni
2 or 3 years
non
passed.
vede mai più tornare quel
That
discepolo, dice, ma
disciple
sarà che è rimasto
didn't show up at all. Well, maybe he was offended. He just went off.
chiede agli altri
And he
discepoli,
asked the
avete
other
visto il
disciples,
suo
"Have you
lì?
seen that
No,
disciple?" "No, no, we haven't
ok,
seen him."
andate al suo villaggio a cercarlo,
And
cosa
they went to
sapete
his
trovare.
village to see where he was.
Vanno al suo
They
villaggio,
went to his village
chiedono e
and they
si
asked,
installano e
and
dicono
nobody
no,
knows.
sta meditando in una
And
caverna in quel
somebody
posto
says,
lì.
"Well, he's
Ritornano, poi
meditating in
dicono
that
lui sta
cave."
meditando lì. Lui dice ok, andate a cercarlo.
So they
Bene,
came,
almeno 3 giorni di camminata.
so another 3 days walking
3
to
giorni di
that,
camminata, arrivano lì, lo
to arrive at
trovano
the cave
seduto
where
che
he's
meditava in questa caverna
meditating in
e
this
aveva una corda in
cave.
testa.
And he had a horn on his head.
Ritornano e dicono
And they come
maestro, abbiamo
back,
trovato e
the
lì
monks,
c'ha
we
questa
found
corda
him.
in mezzo.
We found him, and he had a horn on his
Ok,
head.
è il caso
And the
di
master
tornare da
said,
me
"Okay, oh my goodness, he
altri
took
3
me
giorni per
literally.
andare.
Go back and tell
Fai
him to
tornare
come
3
back."
giorni
So
per
another
andare.
3
Lui
days
dice,
to go
il
back there.
maestro dice a te di tornare da lui. Ah,
My
va bene,
master
però
says,
gli ho chiesto
says you've got to come back because the corn has grown so much I can't get out of the cave. So they, another 3 days, they come back to the master and they said, and the master says, they have to meditate on the fact that his horn disappears. That they say that he developed in 3 years such a level of concentration that in 3 days he managed to make the horn disappear, and 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 the meditator had developed such a state of meditation that he managed to understand all the teachings that he hadn't understood before and reached very elevated states. When this demonstrates when you have faith and certainty, you achieve a lot. And the other stories, he comes back from a journey, and one day he gets sick. He has a very bad influence and a horrible pussy throat. He couldn't get better. And at a certain point, somebody says, "Well, there's a healer in the village who they say is helping so many people. Do you think we should try with him?" And Master says, "Yeah, sure, let's try." So, and the healer comes back, and he said, "Well, I know this guy, but who?" He concentrates. He recites the mantra. Your nose is like a rudaksha. And then he remembers the story that he took seriously his joke. He recited this mantra, this pseudo mantra, for so much time with such faith and concentration that he actually developed powers of healing. He started laughing so much, uncontrollably, that he expelled all the pus in his throat, laughing so much. And there are so many other stories of this, of the power of faith. Very often, it's much more important, the determination in the practice and the certainty in the path than the great intellectual capacity and knowledge. Therefore, Atisha started by saying, abandon all doubt. We have to find our certainty in 3 ways. First, finding a person we can have trust in. The second, having our own experience, and the third one, our own understanding. We have to unite those 3. We're not talking about a blind faith, but we're talking about a direction and to have certainty and clarity. If we abandon all doubt, if we don't have a clear objective and clarity, time passes, days, weeks, months pass, and we're there. We go on reacting to situations without having a clear objective or a clear path to follow. We pass years looking at travel sites, wondering where to go. We actually have to leave, and for that we have to have the certainty where we're going. We can close the book, go home. Okay, before anything else, let's do this. If we have this certainty, we have to remind ourselves to reinforce this. What happens? Because sometimes you leave for a journey, and then along the way you forget why you're on that path. Somebody talks about another place, and then we change destination. But it's to remind ourselves, what do I want? Why I am here? Why am I here? Therefore, Once we've chosen the path and we have clarity on where we want to go, we have to abandon completely lethargy, dullness and laziness, and we have to exert ourselves constantly with enthusiasm. Ni muk lelo. 3 states. Ni, as translated as lethargy, or attachment to sleeping. In another teaching, Atisha was quite rigid. Atisha said, was very clear on the fact that you shouldn't sleep at the beginning of the night, at the beginning of the morning. It was very important for a practitioner just after sunset and to get up just before sunrise. And he was viewed very badly, and it was looked down on to be sleeping after sunrise. Sometimes my teacher woke me up, banged on my door. Get up, it's late. It's 11 o'clock, shame on you. Well, he didn't say, be ashamed, I heard that. I used to get up, oh my God, no, it's so late. There's a kind of shame. Then I wake up, open the door, and there's a clock. It was 7 o'clock. I looked at him and he smiled. He was awake from 3. Used to go to bed at 9, wake up at 3 in the morning. Why shouldn't we sleep in certain hours? First of all, there's a natural cycle that if we can follow it, we'll have more energy. Our life will unfold more easily. Second thing is, it's said that the best moment to meditate is in the morning. If we start the day well, we can direct the day very effectively. But in order to be able to do this, we can't, if we want to start the day, well, we can't go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's important to go to bed early. Another very important aspect, and more important, is that if really we have an objective to change our habits and to go against the tide, to change our internal state, we have no time to waste. There's absolutely no time to waste. With this wonderful opportunity that we have, I'm there lying in bed. Okay, it's important to rest, sure. But my own experience is that in the morning, there's a moment in which I wake up alone. If I wake up in that moment, if I go back to sleep, which is really easy and even nice, I wake up with less energy. That's true. As if the second part of sleep took away some of my energy, takes away some of my energy. First of all, to abandon attachment to sleeping. Abandon the state of muk. Muk in Tibetan is used as, it's like fog. It's the state when you're awake, but it's kind of foggy. You don't understand things, you're a bit kind of mental torpor. Get rid of those states. And also laziness. What is laziness? Well, this is my own definition. I say my own because I haven't read it anywhere and nobody explained it to me, but it's my conclusion. It could be wrong or right. Laziness, in my opinion, is a state, an inner state, which unites 2 things. It's the union of the certainty of of the importance of something with the absolute lack of desire for that thing. I know I should do it, but I don't want to. What's the problem with laziness? Laziness takes away, robs our opportunities that we have. Because days are not repeated, opportunities don't repeat themselves. It's really important to have this determination with ourselves. That which we consider to be important, we do. Is it difficult? Is it tiring? Yes. Do I want to not do it? Maybe yes. So what should I do? Do it. Well, I might say, yes, it's tiring. Yeah, but so is life. So if we don't get tired for one thing, we get tired for something else. So may as well do the right thing. But somebody might say, it's tiring. I've said it very clearly. Have you ever got tired during a holiday at the end of a day on the beach? Where you've done practically nothing. Are you tired or not? Yes. But to be at home, doing nothing, watching television, worse than doing nothing. Yeah, because to watch television on watching something stupid, to pass your day like that, are you tired or not? Therefore, my theory is, when one wakes up, as it starts consuming the battery at the end of the day, until the end of the day. So if being tired is not a good excuse because we get tired anyway. But yeah, it's tiring. But it's life in general is tiring. But it becomes very important to have this determination to enter within us. I have to achieve my objectives. Will there be difficulties on the way? There will be conditions that I don't want. I'll have to do things I don't want. But what will I do? I'm going to do what I think is important. That is part of our personal training. And exert yourself constantly with enthusiasm. Bepa means commit yourself with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, Shantideva describes as what is joy. It's the joy of virtue. The explanation which I received, which helped such a lot, joyful effort is energy, putting energy into that which is difficult, but live it as it's something nice and beautiful. Atisha says, be clear about what you want and remember that the path is not easy and put energy into your objective. Once disciple came to me in Brazil and said, Lama, you didn't tell me at the beginning it was so difficult. So that's why I make a disclaimer now. The path is not easy. You need a lot of effort. Know this right from the beginning. This is important because it's called the energy or patience is like the armor. Why? Why does a soldier, a warrior, why does he put on armor when he goes to war, to battle? Because the armor is beautiful, nice. I can imagine it's so uncomfortable. Why does he put on the armor? Because he knows he's going to get hit. If he was sure that he wouldn't get hit, he wouldn't bother the armor. see, you put the arm on because you are going to get hit by something.
Quindi uno parte già così.
So one
Lo
leap
sforzo come l'armatura, o la
pass like
pazienza
this,
è come l'armatura,
the
è di già
effort
prevedere le
and the
difficoltà.
patience like an arm
Dici
is
sì,
to
sto partendo per quel
be
viaggio
able
lì,
to see
ci
this
saranno
before it
tante
happens.
difficoltà.
I know there are going to
Ci
be
sarà
difficulties.
questo
There'll
con la
be
macchina, ci
this
sarà
one with
quello in
the
cui non mi vogliono lasciare passare la frontiera,
there'll be
ci sarà il problema di qua, ci sarà il problema di
the big
là. Uno
problems
rimane
at the with the
sempre
car, with at the
e si
frontier,
mette nell'animo di sì, l'ho
on the
superato.
journey. But you already have it in
Quando
mind
noi
to
ci mettiamo
overcome
davanti,
these
immaginiamo
difficulties.
meglio e pensiamo che non succederà nessuna
When we think
difficoltà,
everything
alla
is
prima
going to be
difficoltà
easy,
vogliamo
at the
mollare.
first difficulty, then we want to give up.
Invece quando noi ci
So when
prepariamo
we
per il peggio,
prepare for the
dopo
worst afterwards,
quello che accade
what
non è così
happens
grave.
is not so bad.
La Magancia una volta ha
Lama
parlato di
Ganshan
questo a me,
talked about
mi
this with me.
ricordò
He
una
reminded
delle
me
sue prime
that one of his
esperienze di
first
queste,
experiences
molto
of this,
forti,
which was very strong,
è stato al monastero
was
di Sera.
in Sera Monastery,
Lui stava
and
studiando filosofia,
he was studying
aveva
philosophy. He had
intorno ai 16
around him,
anni all'epoca e
he was
studiava molto
16,
molto bene, era
and he
molto
studied
bravo.
very well.
E a
He
un
was a good
certo
student at a
punto
certain point.
tutti i monaci, preso il
Although
caso in Lama, prima degli
monks
altri,
be-
dovevano dare un
had to
esame,
give an exam,
che era una sessione di
which was
dibattito su
um,
un argomento in
debating
particolare,
session on a
su cui
particular
dovevi
subject,
rispondere tutta la notte. Si
and
dibatte
to which he had to
tutta la
answer
notte, si fa
questions
fino all'alba.
until dawn, all night until dawn.
E in questo
In
caso
this case,
l'argomento
the
era il
subject was
spiritual, che è una delle logiche per
one of the
comprendere la vacuità.
one of the logics to understand emptiness,
È uno dei,
and,
il primo
and the first
argomento degli studi più
subject
difficile, quando si
of the
comincia
difficult when you
a
start
studiare la filosofia
studying
budista in modo
something a bit
serio,
more
chiamiamola
difficult in
così.
an academic way in a
La
monastery.
prima materia
The
veramente
first
difficile è
subject,
questa, gli
which is
altri
really
diventano
difficult,
molto molto facili.
the other
E
subjects before are
quindi
much
Rinpoche si
easier.
era
Rinpoche
preparato benissimo,
had
aveva
prepared
studiato
very well. He
tanto
studied
e
so
mi
well,
racconta che
and
quando arrivò lì per
he
dare,
told me that when
stare lì a rispondere, perché tu stai
he
a
arrived there,
rispondere, e poi
ready
tutti
to
si
answer
possono
the
fare
questions,
queste domande. Ci sono quelli che hanno preparato
anybody
le loro domande
can
e poi
ask
stavano lì
questions.
tutta la notte uno dopo l'altro.
So one after the
E
other,
lui si
all of
diceva
them
che lui
could ask
arrivato lì
questions, and
con la
he
sua
arrived there
mente da leone, era
like
pronto.
he was like a lion, really
Quando hanno
determined.
cominciato
And
gli
when they
altri,
started,
dice che non dava una risposta giusta.
he
E gli è
didn't give
andato
one right
malissimo.
answer.
E alla fine è finito, quella che lui è andato dal suo maestro a dire ma io
And he
non
said,
ho capito niente,
he went to his master, I didn't
ho studiato
understand
tanto,
anything.
non
I
ho fatto
studied so
bene,
much and it
eccetera,
didn't go
eccetera.
well.
Il suo maestro
And
gli
his
disse
master
no, hai
said,
fatto
it
bene,
went really well.
solo che tu
It's just
pensavi
that
che sarebbe stato facile
you
e
thought it was going to be
pensavi che non
easy. You
avresti avuto
thought
nessuna
you wouldn't have
difficoltà.
any difficulty at all.
Ricordati prima,
Remember,
preparati per il peggio.
prepare yourself for the worst.
Rinpoche diverse volte mi
And
raccontò queste regole.
and Rinpoche often told me this,
Io cercavo di applicare quello che
and I
poteva
tried
insegnare
to
quando
apply this
davo gli esami in
when I
monastero.
gave the.
Io sempre immaginavo che sarebbe
I took
andato
exams
malissimo.
in the monastery. I always imagined that
Preparavo
the
per il
exams would
peggio
go
anche con davvero una
really
certa
badly,
sicurezza che andava bene.
even if
Mi
I was
preparavo
kind
per
of
il
sure
peggio.
inside of me. I was prepared
Poi alla
myself
fine
for
è
the
andato
worst.
tutto
At
abbastanza
the
bene.
end, it all went quite well.
Però il
When
fatto è che
But the
quando
fact
noi
is
ci
that when
prepariamo
we
per il
prepare
peggio,
ourselves for the worst,
non è un solo prepararsi per il peggio
it's
nel
not for the
senso di
worst
vivere
in the
nell'ansia,
sense of
magari andrà
to
male.
live in
E dire non
anxiety
importa ciò che
that it will go
accade, io lo
badly.
supererò.
What it means
Ho i
is,
mezzi
doesn't matter
per
what
superarlo,
happens,
lo
I
supererò.
will overcome it. I have the means to overcome it.
Non è l'ansia,
It's not
mi può succedere quello,
anxiety.
mi può
Oh my
succedere
God, this can
quell'altro,
happen
quindi
to me.
rimango fermo e non
Oh
comincio
my,
niente.
and so
È il
it
contrario,
freezes us and we don't
è
take any action.
una
But it
fiducia in
gives
se
us more
stessi che
resolve.
dice
It gives us
se
more
ci
faith in
saranno
ourselves. If
difficoltà,
there are
io sono
difficulties,
pronto per
I am
affrontarle.
ready to overcome these
Può
difficulties.
succedere questo, può succedere
This,
quell'altro,
that, and the other
io
can happen.
riuscirò
I
a
will
superarli. Ho i mezzi per
overcome
superarli.
these
Ce la
problems.
posso
I have the
fare.
resource to overcome these problems.
Quindi con questo uno
With
si
this,
prepara già.
one prepares
In
oneself
questo modo,
in
quando ci
this way.
sono le difficoltà,
When there are
non
difficulties,
diventa una ragione
it,
per mollare.
it doesn't become a reason to give up.
Quindi quando noi cominciamo il nostro
When we
percorso
start our path,
e quando stiamo già camminando
when we're already on the
e
path
guardiamo avanti,
and we look
ci
ahead,
saranno dei momenti difficili,
will there be difficult moments?
sicuro.
Of course.
Ci saranno dei
There'll be
momenti
moments in which
nel quale noi guardiamo e
we
dicono ma
look,
cosa sto
what am
facendo?
I
Ma ci sarà
doing?
veramente
Oh my,
possibile?
is it
Ci sono dei
possible?
momenti nel percorso
There'll
nel
be
quale uno ha
moments
la
when
sensazione che
we
non
have
sa
the
più cosa fare perché è
impression
come se non
of
andasse avanti. Ci sono momenti
sensation of
in
not knowing
cui
what to do, not going forward.
quell'innamoramento del Dharma
There are
magari
moments
viene
of
più caro. Ci
the
sono
falling in
momenti
love
in
with
cui
Dharma we don't
le
feel anymore.
condizioni
The
esterne
conditions, or
appaiono
maybe
così
external conditions are just so difficult that we don't even have the clarity or the force to overcome these situations. There are doubts, certainties, so many things that can befall us. But we have to be ready to confront all these situations. Therefore, these 4 lines mean we must have clarity about what we want, and we prepare ourselves for whatever happens along our path. One of the biggest interferences that occurs on our path, is that things are not as we think they should be. Our tendency is to react with an idealized image of masters, of the Sangha, of Dharma, and many things. An idealized image of ourselves. After 2 years, I'll be like this and that. And after 2 years, it seems like we've got worse. Many people have come to me and said, I don't know if this stuff works for me. Years I'm here trying to do this, and I feel I've got worse, not better. Somebody comes to me, some people come to me and say, Dharma doesn't work. And I looked and I thought, on 2 occasions, it's 25 years that I'm doing this and I haven't seen any improvement. Okay. First of all, there's a particular case in these 25 years. Are they 25 years of belonging to a group or 25 years of practice? Okay. I mean, belonging to a group is a small part of it. How often have you put yourself on the line and had the courage to confront your own shadows? And how many times have you pointed the finger at other people, given the blame to other people? How often have you how often have you actually practiced with consistency? Just because I just take refuge and count the days that passed, that would be fantastic if we just had to pass the time after taking refuge. What counts is how much we practice, how much we put ourselves on the front line, question ourselves. And another person asked me the same thing, and I said, do you suffer the same way that you did before, in the same way? Are you more patient? Yes. Do you relate in a different way, in the same way to God? So what? No. So why are you saying to me that it didn't work? You're not a Buddha. Okay, it's not immediate. What happens is that when we're at the beginning, let's imagine I have this image, a table, a wooden table, very dirty, with bits of food stuck in it, stains. At the beginning, when we go near the path, and we have, at the beginning it seems we can get rid of all the big pieces of dirt. It seems that we've done a lot. Oh, how nice this is. But then we start scrubbing the table because there are stains. And the stains, we need a cloth or a sponge. We have to be days and days and days and days to get rid of the stains. What happens is that the further we go along the path, the more we have to confront our more subtle and deeper defilements, which are very good at hiding themselves. So at a certain point, it can happen that it might seem that we're getting worse. But in most cases, it's because we have more clarity of aspects that before we didn't see. This is what happens in most cases. More awareness of RD farms. And it's not because I can't see that it doesn't exist. If it, at the beginning we had like standards of hygiene and cleanliness, which I saw in India, let's say. So, okay. Well, I don't want to get into details. But our standard of hygiene and cleanliness, and we see dirt where we didn't see it before. It's just that our standards of cleanliness have improved. This is what happens the further we go on. But most probably, there's a moment in each of us, it seems as though we're not improving. It seems like we don't know what to do. We don't know, put energy in going forwards, doubts. But we must maintain the effort and to overcome this moment and to regain our stability. Therefore, let's put determination and to overcome our laziness and to let's put energy into the path, our practice. Apathy, lethargy is what happens with television, social media. I don't know if you've ever noticed that you're in front of the telephone, cell phone, flicking, scrolling, without even realizing. It's a kind of fogginess in your head. This is part of this so-called bodhichitta mukpa, dullness. We should focus on being aware and awake. Let's go on. With mindful recollection, vigilance, and conscientiousness, guard the doors of your senses at all times. Again, there are three very important qualities in the path: awareness, vigilance, and attention. These are three words which, when they're translated, are not perfect. Drempa, for example, is translated as memory. It's also awareness. It's a memory of where I want to go, how I want to behave, what's my path. So, to use the metaphor again, when I leave for a journey, clarity of where I want to go to. Vigilance, and vigilance is the capacity to survey where we're going constantly. So sometimes I might go in a certain direction. Maybe we think we're going in a certain direction. Sometimes we go to work the same. So sometimes we think we're taking the right road, but we're on the wrong road, a road that we're used to taking. This trempa is to remember our objective. What do I want? Where am I going? How should I behave? What are the vigilance is the part of us which says, hang on, what am I doing? Careful. No, don't go here. You're going off course. This kind of self-vigilance. And the third thing is translated as attention or conscientiousness. Is aware of that which we already know. For example, will we die? Are we sure? But in our daily life, do we have conscientiousness of this? Are we conscious of this? Are we conscious of our own mortality in daily life? No.
Quindi io so
I know
che morirò,
I will die,
ma non sono
but
consapevole di
not
questo
aware
perché
of
non
this
sono quotidianità.
during my daily life.
Mancanza di coscienziosità.
So it's a lack of conscientiousness.
Okay? In tibetano Pakyo
In Tibetan
è
Pakya,
un'attitudine molto importante che è quella di riportare
Daddy.
nella quotidianità le
It's
cose
the
che
quality of being
sappiamo,
able to
ma che spesso
bring
non
into our daily
ricordiamo.
life that which we know already, but we kind of
Perciò
ignore or
una delle
forget
chiavi per questo
during our
è
daily life.
quella di mettere per
So
iscritto o prendere dei testi
we need to
dove ci
take
ricordano
texts
le cose
that
che noi
remind us
sappiamo
of
per
things that we
bodhicitta.
already know.
Io una volta,
Once
quando ero con Rinpoche in
I was
Brasile,
on
in un
a plane,
monastero
so I was in a
trappista,
monastery.
c'è così in italiano? No? È una tradizione cristiana. E questo
I was in a monastery,
era
Christian
un ex
monastery.
monastero,
It was
in
an
realtà non
ex-monastery,
c'erano più, era dismesso, però c'erano ancora scritti delle frasi,
but there were
eccetera.
still
E io ho
phrases,
imparato che nella tradizione
Christian phrases.
trappista, mi ricordo bene,
If I remember,
quando due persone si incontrano,
when two
invece di dire
people
buongiorno, ciao, si
meet
dice ricordati che morirai.
in this tradition, when two
Quindi
people
ogni
meet,
giorno
remember,
si trova al mattino, ricordati che morirai, ricordati che
they say to
morirai.
each other, remember that you're going to die.
Questo era ogni volta che uno si incontrava in mezzo ai
When
corridoi, eccetera,
they
c'era
met during
questo
the
ricordo.
met in the corridors, they had to
Ci
remind each
sono
other,
alcuni, nella
instead
storia
of
buddista, alcuni per
greeting each
esempio
other, they would say,
monaci che
remember
avevano
that you had
scelto
to
di non mangiare con un
remember that you're going to
cucchiaio
die.
normale,
So
ma mangiare con un osso
they
di una costola.
they ate
Perché?
with
Per
a thigh
ricordarsi che
bone
moriranno.
and not a spoon in order to remind themselves that they were going to
Però
die.
è assurdo
But
perché è una
it's
cosa che
absurd
tutti
because
sappiamo, però non ce
we
la
all
sentiamo
know,
riconoscere.
but we go on as if it weren't
Tanto
true.
la frase più bella è se io dovessi morire,
My best phrase is, if I were to die,
uno
if
rimane
I
lì
die.
e si chiede e
And
che
I think,
alternativa hai?
and I say, well, hang on a second, what alternative do you have?
Perciò
Therefore,
la coscienziosità è
the
una pratica molto
conscientiousness.
importante. E quello che è importante è ognuno di noi prendere le cose che noi impariamo.
We take what we know,
Quando riusciamo a riflettere e
when
arriviamo
we
a una
reflect
conclusione,
and get to a conclusion,
dobbiamo riportarle nella nostra
we have
quotidianità.
to bring it back to our
Perciò,
daily
tramite la
life.
consapevolezza,
So, through
la chiarezza
the
di quello che
awareness,
cosa
the
vuoi,
clarity of what I
la
want,
vigilanza e
the
la
vigilance
coscienziosità,
and the consciousness,
ricordati di sorvegliare
we remember
l'ospedalizione ogni
to
porta dei tuoi sensi.
guard the
In
doors
altre
of our
parole,
senses at all times. In other
sorvegliare
words,
come
to
parlo,
guard, to
come
survey
interagisco,
how I speak, how I interact,
come uso il mio
how I
corpo
use
e la
my
mia
body
parola,
and
principalmente quello.
my word, principally that, body, speech and mind.
Perché come io
Because
uso il
I
mio corpo e
use
la
my
mia
body
parola
and
va
my
a
word
determinare il modo in
determines
cui io
in
vado a
which I
trasformarmi nel mondo
transform
esperienziale.
myself and interact with
Quindi,
the world.
qual è il modo
What's the
migliore
best way to
di interagire?
interact?
Abbiamo per esempio delle
We,
abitudini verbali che ci fanno male,
do we have any verbal habits that are no good,
dei termini
that
che
harm us,
utilizziamo,
terms that we
delle
use,
abitudini di fare dei commenti che magari non sarebbero necessari, che non
comments that
portano
we make that we
beneficio,
shouldn't necessarily
o no?
make or bring benefit? Yes, we
Una
do.
volta che ho capito che quello non
Once
fa bene,
I understand that
dovrei
this
vigilare
harms
con
me,
i miei
I
sensi.
have to be
Quindi stare
vigilant with my
attento a non
senses
utilizzare la parola in
and
quel modo.
be careful not to use these
Quindi
terms.
non siamo qua a dire devi fare questo, non devi fare quello.
And we're not here to say you
Ma
shouldn't do
ogni
this or
volta
do
in cui
that,
abbiamo
but where
compreso che qualcosa
we've
non ci fa
understood
bene, dobbiamo
that
proteggerci
something harms
dalle
us,
nostre
we
proprie
need to
abitudini.
protect ourselves
Per
from
questo
doing
che
that
serve
again. Therefore,
ricordo, consapevolezza di
recollection,
cosa devo fare, dove
awareness
lo
of
devo
what I
fare,
should
dove devo
do,
andare,
where I want to go,
vigilanza per stare
vigilance,
attenti dove sto
self-vigilance,
andando e
where
cosa sto facendo,
I'm doing and where I'm
e
going,
coscienziosità,
and
ricordare quello che
consciousness.
noi già sappiamo. Questo è importante. Qualcuno ogni tanto dice, ah Lama, però
Lama
ripeti le
might say
stesse
to me
cose.
sometimes,
Continuerò a ripeterle.
and I continue repeat, I will continue to
Né
repeat.
una, né due, né mille, ma milioni di volte. Finché non siamo coscienziosi veramente. Perché capire non serve al mondo.
Understanding is not
Se il
really
mio obiettivo
useful. If
fosse
my
far
objective
capire
is
qualcosa,
to make you
io
understand
quello che ho
something,
da dire sinceramente l'ho già
what
detto,
I've
riprendete i video su YouTube,
I've
guardateli,
said
fate
everything
quello
I
che
need
volete.
to say. They're all on YouTube. Just go and
Quello che
you
noi
can watch them.
facciamo
But
insieme,
what we're doing here
per la
together,
maggioranza di
for
noi,
most of us,
non è condividere
is
conoscenza, non è
not to share
insegnare
knowledge,
qualcosa.
to teach something.
È una sorta di
It's a kind of
meditazione
meditation,
analitica collettiva.
a collective analytical meditation,
dove noi andiamo a
where we are
familiarizzarci
familiarizing ourselves with stuff that we know already,
per cercare di portare a casa,
to bring
cercare di
forward
svegliarci un po'.
to the surface, to wake ourselves up.
Ok? E sia di giorno sia di notte,
So night and day, 3 times, 3 times at night,
esamina
examine
ripetutamente il
the
tuo
continuum
continuum
of your mind.
Senti il t'approcciare. Osserva, esamina
Observe,
i tuoi
examine
pensieri.
your thoughts.
Diventa molto importante
It becomes very
prima
important to
osservare il
observe
nostro
our
comportamento
own behavior,
fisico
physical
e verbale.
and verbal.
Per poi dopo
And
arrivare
then
a
afterwards
osservare
to
la nostra
observe
mente.
our mind.
E non appena vediamo
And
che
as soon
stiamo
as we
veicolando un pensiero,
will
un'emozione in
start
una direzione che non ci fa bene,
with thinking of something or going
con
in
la
a
vigilanza,
direction with our emotion,
coscienziosità,
with
ridirigiamo
our
quel pensiero.
conscientiousness, we bring ourselves back to the right point.
Io, per me almeno, una delle cose più
For me,
importanti
one of the
che
most important things
io credo di poter praticare e
I
avere è
believe
la vigilanza o la
I believe
consapevolezza dei miei propri pensieri.
one of the most important things to practice is the vigilance of my own thoughts and mind.
Accorgermi
And then
certi
many are
processi interni che non mi
often
piacciono.
I've become aware
E quando uno si accorge, quando
of
sta cominciando, non lo prosegue, lo
thoughts
lascia
and
passare.
processes that
Mentre
have
invece
started,
dall'altra
that are
parte,
rising in my mind, and then I stop them
però
and redirect
diventa
them.
veramente importante questa
But
nostra capacità
this
di
capacity
autoanalisi.
of
Non è senso di colpa,
self-analysis, not the sense a
autoanalisi è
guilt,
osservare, non è stare lì a
but to
rielaborare
observe.
e chiedersi ma cosa sto facendo, ma non
It doesn't
perché,
mean why am I
devo
doing
fare.
this.
No, è
It,
la
it's the
osservazione dei
observation
propri
of our
pensieri,
own thoughts,
osservare e
to observe
ridirezionare.
and to redirect our thoughts.
Quindi questa nostra capacità di
This
autoosservazione è
capacity
molto
of
importante. Quando
self-observation is very
raggiungiamo uno
important. When we
stato
reach a state
dove
where
stiamo bene,
we're well,
questa
this
autoosservazione diminuisce.
self-observation
Più la nostra
can
mente è
diminish.
calma, è
The
gioiosa,
calmer
è
and more joyous
equilibrata, è
and balanced
soddisfatta,
and
più
satisfied
noi
our mind is,
siamo
the more
fuori dalle nostre dinamiche
we're out of
negative
our
interne, eccetera,
negative internal
meno
dynamics,
dobbiamo
the
osservare
less
la nostra
we
mente,
need
più la
to
dobbiamo
observe our
lasciare
mind,
libera,
the more we can leave it free.
più siamo
The
presi dalle
more we're
nostre
taken up
dinamiche
by our
interne,
negative internal
tutte quelle
dynamics,
menate che ci sono,
all the
più dobbiamo
silly
osservare.
preoccupations that we have, the more we need to observe our mind.
Chiaro questo?
Is that clear?
È un po' come
It's as if
se noi stiamo camminando
if
con
we
qualcuno,
would,
un bambino,
if we're talking to a
e
child,
all'inizio non
and the
sappiamo se il
beginning,
bambino cosa può fare,
we don't know what the child can do.
perché non abbiamo fiducia veramente di
We don't have
quale reazione avrà,
trust
eccetera.
his
Quindi dobbiamo
reactions.
sempre guardare, guarda,
Yeah, we have to look at the
vieni qua,
child.
smettila,
We have to control him,
eccetera.
come back, do this, do that, because we're not
Quando
sure
noi
of how
abbiamo una
he'll behave.
totale fiducia nel
But when we
bambino,
have a
a quel
total
punto
faith in
dobbiamo
the
pensare,
child,
guardate,
we can trust him. We don't need to
similmente con i
observe so
pensieri,
much. It's the same with us.
quando vediamo che non ci possiamo fidare così tanto perché entrano dei pensieri che non
So we
vogliamo,
can't
delle
trust ourselves
abitudini, delle
to be
attitudini
free of all
interne,
the
dei
bad
condizionamenti,
habits and
eccetera,
bad
la
internal
gelosia da una
dynamics,
parte, la paura
jealousy,
dall'altra,
fear,
il giudizio
anxiety,
dall'altra parte,
judgment,
l'insoddisfazione che si
dissatisfaction,
manifesta.
which manifests.
Quando si manifestano
When
queste cose,
when
la
these things
cosa
manifest,
importante
the
da
most important thing
ricordarci
is to
è
remember is
queste non sono
this
altro
is
che
nothing other
abitudini
than
del passato.
habits acquired in the past.
Quando sorge la paura,
When
la
fear
gelosia,
arises,
l'invidia, la
jealousy,
rabbia, qualunque altra
envy,
cosa di questo
anger,
genere,
any of these
ricordare
things,
che
we must
queste
remember
sono
that
abitudini
these are habits
del passato.
of the
Non
past.
ho bisogno
I
di
don't need
seguirle.
to follow them.
Poi li seguiremo comunque,
Anyway, we follow them anyway,
all'inizio
at the
almeno,
beginning.
e gradualmente
And
riusciamo a
gradually,
seguirle meno.
we manage
Però
to
il
follow
passo
them less and less.
importante è quello di
The important
osservare
step
il
is
nostro
to
pensiero
observe
mentale.
our mental continuum.
Qualcuno mi dirà, no, ma
And so we
uno non
said,
si
well,
riposa mai.
that means we never rest. I say, no, you don't.
Nel senso che
In the
deve
sense
essere
that
un riposo continuo.
it should be.
Però prima di arrivare a questo riposo
Before we
continuo,
can reach the
uno
state of a
dovrebbe
continual rest,
osservare
we
e
need to be able to
direzionare in tutti i
observe
momenti,
and to direct in every instance,
ricordandoci di farlo
remembering
senza
that
un'abitudine del senso di colpa.
without doing this with a sense
L'abitudine
of
non è riprendersi,
guilt, the point is not to
l'abitudine
tell
è
ourselves off,
consapevolezza,
but to
accoglimento
be
e direzionamento.
of awareness,
Questo è chiaro,
acceptance, and redirection. Is that clear? If I say something,
mi picchiate, mi smettila perché fai così, non dovresti fare,
you shouldn't
quasi
do
una
this,
sorta di punizione.
as if it were like a punishment we want to give ourselves.
L'esempio del bambino, e
The
il
example
bambino
of the
fa una
baby,
cosa sbagliata,
the
la
child does
madre
something
gli dà
wrong.
una sberla, dice
We
ma
give them a
perché
big
fai
hit. Why do
questo,
you
non
do
dovresti
this?
fare,
Yeah, you shouldn't do this.
un
No.
capraccio, che ne so, ognuno dice quello che vuole. Un po' di tempo fa
Some
ho
time ago,
visto
I
un
saw
padre reagire con un
a
bambino che è
father
rimasto così.
reacting so badly with his
Momenti in cui
child.
come
I
non va
was
fatto.
really upset.
Il bambino stava
The child
scendendo una scala,
was going down the staircase
camminando con la mano sul corridoio.
with the hand
A
on
un
the
certo punto
rail,
questa mano sul corrimano, il corrimano si è rotto.
and
Era vecchio.
the rail
E
fell
adesso
off,
lì il
and it
bambino
was
non è che
old.
fosse 150 kg,
But it was not as if the child was 150
aveva la mano
kilos,
normale.
strong man.
Ha preso
It
una
just fell
sberla,
in
il
his hand.
padre
The
imbecille, cosa hai
father
fatto? Di qua, di
hit
là.
him, called him an idiot.
No?
Why did you do
Io
that?
sono rimasto lì.
I felt so upset.
E questo è quello che non dobbiamo fare.
And this isn't what we shouldn't do with
Dobbiamo
ourselves.
osservare
We
noi
should
stessi, ma
observe
quando
ourselves,
noi ci
but when
accorgiamo che stiamo
we
facendo
see that
qualcosa
we're
di
doing
non corretto,
something that we
non
shouldn't do,
dobbiamo
we shouldn't
riprenderci e
start
gridare e cercare di punire.
berating ourselves.
Noi dobbiamo darci
We
la giusta
should
direzione,
give ourselves the right direction,
accorgere e
accept ourselves,
direzionare.
and redirect
Ma
ourselves.
stai attento,
Be careful.
guardi meglio dove cammini,
Look better
vedi
where you're
come
going.
è.
You see how it is.
Però prima dobbiamo
But first of all,
accorgere
we
noi
need
stessi
to
con tanto affetto verso di
accept
noi.
ourselves, embrace ourselves with
E
affection.
poi dobbiamo
And then
direzionarci.
we should redirect ourselves in a gentle manner.
È chiara la differenza
Is
tra
that
le
clear,
due?
the difference?
Quindi io voglio mettere chiarezza su questo
I
perché
want to
certe
give
volte
clarity on this because sometimes
quando diciamo di osservare se stessi,
when
l'autovigilanza,
when we talk
eccetera,
about observing ourselves and
possiamo cadere in
self-vigilance, we
questa
can fall into the
abitudine
trap of
di una
being
sorta di
of
auto,
self-punishment,
una rigidità
with
verso se stessi anche
too
con una sorta di autopunizione e senso di colpa.
of guilt
Invece
and
no, noi dobbiamo
self-punishment.
fare questa autovigilanza
We
con
should
un
do this
profondo
self
affetto verso di noi.
vigilance with a profound affection towards
E quando
ourselves.
vediamo
And
che c'è
when we see that there's
un'abitudine
a
cattiva,
habit
un
which is a
comportamento che
bad,
non va bene, che
that's not
soffre,
right,
non
which
dobbiamo essere
arises,
accondiscendenti,
we shouldn't allow it
ma
and
dobbiamo
be
accogliere
indulgent.
noi stessi
But we
e
need to
direzionare
embrace ourselves and
le
gently
nostre azioni.
redirect our actions in the right
Ok?
way.
Credo di essere abbastanza
I think
chiaro.
I've been clear enough, no?
Ok. Vediamo il prossimo verso
Let's
velocemente.
see the next verse quickly.
E quando dice 3 volte di giorno e di notte,
This is
perché ci sono
3 times day and night. There are
6 minuti nel giorno, quindi
6
cambio di
moments in the day
energia.
when there's a change of energy.
L'alba,
Dawn,
il tramonto,
sun,
mezzogiorno,
sunset,
mezzanotte. Ci
midday,
sono alcuni
midnight.
momenti del
There are
giorno
moments during the
dove
day
c'è un cambio
where there's a
energetico e quando c'è questo
change of
cambio
energy. When this
energetico
happens
esterno, noi siamo più
externally, we're
suscettibili
more
a cambi di
susceptible
umore.
to change
Quindi noi dobbiamo
moods. We should
osservare la
observe
nostra mente e
our
stare più
mind
attenti
and
quando
to
ci sono
be,
questi momenti.
we should observe ourselves and
Quando
be
si
more
dice il
vigilant when these
giorno di luna
moments
piena
occur.
è il giorno per fare più pratiche
When they
spirituali.
say the full moon, we should do
Non è perché
more,
è il giorno speciale per le pratiche
more
spirituali,
spiritual
perché è il
practice.
giorno che
Not
siamo più
because it's a special
suscettibili
day,
alle nostre
simply
emozioni,
because we're more
meno
susceptible
collegati.
um, to our own emotions.
Gli orari in cui ci sono i cambiamenti di umore, meglio pregare,
Well, so it's
meglio
therefore,
avere
better to pray at
piena
this moment
consapevolezza,
when we're more
osservare,
susceptible,
vedere i
to look
cambiamenti di umore
inside and
per
see our
ridirezionarci,
changes
non
and
lasciarci prendere
see
da
the
loro.
changes in our
Io ho
moods
visto
and
diverse
redirection.
volte,
I've seen many times,
avreste visto anche voi stessi
and
in
also
altri.
in yourselves and other people.
Dov'è? Uno sta
Everything's
fermo,
okay.
non c'è.
Everything's okay. At a certain point, something happens.
Non si capisce il perché.
Nobody understands why.
Uno sente una parola,
Somebody hears a
si
word,
ricorda di un pensiero,
remembers
un'immagine di qualcosa
or
e il
image of
mondo
something,
crolla.
and the whole world explodes.
Non so se avete mai visto questo.
I don't know if you've ever seen this.
Sì o no?
Yes or no?
Succede, no?
It
Inizia a
happens.
girare. Dice, scusi, ma che cosa è successo? No?
But then you say, well, what happened?
È un pensiero.
It's a thought. It's only a thought.
Questo avviene principalmente in questi momenti di cambiamento.
So these occur principally in the 6 moments of
Quindi dobbiamo
change.
stare attenti
Therefore,
proprio
we should
invece di
be
osservare la
vigilant to
propria
observe
mente,
our
perché
own mind,
vengono i
This happens
e
to
a
me
un
many
certo
times. At a
punto
certain
vedere il
point,
pensiero.
to see a thought,
Che cosa sto pensando?
what am I thinking?
Questo non è mio.
It's not me.
Quasi come se qualcuno mi parlasse.
It's as if somebody were talking
Se
to
io
me.
seguo quel
And now
pensiero
if I
posso
follow
stare
that
anche
thought,
per delle ore.
I can go along for hours and hours.
Perciò è importante veramente avere questa
So
auto-osservazione
we
con
need to this.
affetto e con fermezza.
So we need to see this with affection
Lo vediamo dalle
and but
lezioni.
firmness at the same time,
Certo,
and
in
redirect
alcuni di
ourselves.
certi pensieri diciamo non c'è spazio per questo. Punto.
And so there's no space for this at all. And that's it.
Una volta avevo fatto qualcosa al mattino che mi era piaciuto molto.
Once I did something I really liked during the day,
Volevo fare da tanto tempo.
and I'd wanted to do it for a long time. I was so happy to have done it.
Fatto al mattino presto.
I got up early in the morning and I did this thing, and that day
Sono andato in cucina.
I went in the kitchen. I had breakfast, something which I never ever do. I go there, there are other people there. I start talking,
Comincio a raccontare quello che ho fatto.
and I start telling people what I'd done with a kind of pride.
Dico a me stesso no, non farlo.
And I said, said to myself, don't do it. Don't transform something virtuous into something of pride. So I don't speak about it. Then we talk about the weather at a certain point, and I get this bagging. I come back. Did this 3 or 4 times. I resisted the temptations, and the last time it just came out. I told everybody that I'd done this thing, and it was an example for me how it's difficult sometimes to keep back a word and habits, and therefore we need to catch this the minute it arises. We need to be vigilant. And more we have this, the more we manage to direct ourselves. All right, verse 3. Proclaim your own failings, but don't look for faults in others. Hide any good quality you may have while declaring others' virtues. This is the opposite of common practice, no? Therefore, openly reveal your failings. Don't be afraid that your own deficiencies, your own errors, come to the light of day. Because when my errors, when my weaknesses, when my wrong behavior, when it comes to the light of day, come to light better that way, then I can do something about it. There's nothing bad. We shouldn't be afraid to see our own errors or that they be seen by others. We should be afraid rather of cultivating them, of hiding them. Every now and again, there's been a problem, even on a very practical level. Let's just say on the level of it's like this has remained as a metaphor for me. I come back from a long journey. I come home. I go to the bathroom, and the toilet was blocked. What do? I try to unblock the toilet. I call my friend who's my plumber friend. He took the whole toilet and everything. And right in the curve there were 3 pieces of watermelon. You know when you cut the watermelon in half and then you cut in thin strips. And they were all bit and chewed out. And there were all these bits, long strips of watermelon stuck in the toilet. And the plumber looked at me saying, "What did you do?" I said, "It wasn't me, I've been waiting." And the plumber said, "Oh yeah, sure, it wasn't you." So somebody, You've no idea what I find in the find in the toilets of others, but I've never seen this. But I've just come back from a long journey. Honestly, it wasn't me. He said, okay, okay. So the only person who was at home then, I said, well, did you have watermelon by any chance? No, 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 it wasn't me. No, watermelon, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't anybody. It was some spirit materialized in the toilet. That was an example. And unfortunately, when a problem arises, it's never the fault of anybody. This doesn't work. Oh, no, it's got nothing to do with me. Oh, I don't know anything about it. It arises on its own. But it's so nice to be able to admit one's own errors, because it means desire to grow, to improve. Because nobody of us is perfect, is without errors. And even when we make a mistake, to admit our mistakes is one of the best protections for ourselves. Once I made a mistake in communicating something with my master, and I don't even know what I said. I said something again, Lapala, regarding was something to do with another teacher's, one of his disciples, which created a conflict between them. Always I made the abbot got angry with the teacher, and there was a terrible conflict. When I realized this had happened, it was too late. And Geshe Chekawa came with the abbot. What have you done? What did you say? And before he said, I said I was wrong. I did this, and that. And I'm sorry. I didn't have the awareness. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done. What can I do to make it better? And I remember that his whole face just changed. He came with such anger. But when I openly admitted my mistake without trying to justify anything, because I made a mistake, but with the energy of wanting to help, naturally his energy changed. He said, okay, let's see what we can do. Therefore, we all make mistakes. But if there's something which we mustn't do, is to hide from ourselves, in the first place, our own errors, and to hide from others, because when we hide our mistakes from others, we also hide them from ourselves. And there's another thing which comes with this. Let me just give you, let me invent an example. I come to you and I say, there's a task, you have to, I don't know, paint a wall. This is the color, and paint the wall. You have to do it yellow. At a certain point, you're there and you're painting nice, and I see that you're using green. And I say, sorry, you're using the wrong color. You shouldn't do it green, it should be yellow. What would be the best thing to say? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, let's take a bit of white, let's paint over it, and let's see how we can solve this problem. And what I often see is, well, it's hardly my fault. You told me, but the other told me, I don't want your justifications, I just want it yellow, that's all I want. We don't need to go into nobody's pointing a finger of you. We're talking about the color of the wall, that's it. But very often when we find ourselves in front of our owners, we take it on a personal level. We try to defend our being, our hope, defend ourselves. When it's nothing, when it's just something practical, Instead of doing this, we do it like that. And from this, there's a very important aspect for all of us. When we relate with others and us, we need to distinguish between and behavior and from the person. This behavior is not repeated. Doesn't mean that the person is bad. A person who tells a lie is not a liar, because he also says the truth. He told a lie. Instead of trying to generalize about the person and judging the person, we need to judge the reaction and the behavior. The person is not bad, has a bad attitude. And so you oppose towards the attitude, not the person. Is that clear? And if we can do this, it would make a big difference. But our tendency is to go against the person and not against the characteristics of the person. Therefore, reveal your mistakes, your shortcomings. Don't be afraid to openly admit your own mistakes. And this is wonderful. Without guilt, but with a desire to grow, with a desire to improve. On the other hand, don't look for the defects in others. Don't criticize others. Don't look for the... It's very clear, this. I imagine this is a problem since the 11th century, and we're still there. So this was written at the beginning of the 11th century, and we're still here. It's more than over 1,000 years, we're still talking about the same thing. Therefore, don't try and criticize others, and don't look for the defects in others. We need to do what Lama Michel Rinpoche did when they asked him, how come you have so many friends? And he answered, because I always relate to their qualities, not their defects. It's not as if he didn't see their defects, but he put his energy into interact with his qualities to try and improve them. He was speaking to this. He was talking about Ducho. Ducho was and is a painter of our tankers, of Lama Ganchen there, of Sarasvati. Many of the tankers Ducho painted. And he told me the first time that Lama Ganchen saw tanker's tanker, it was when Lama Ganchen was in Pomai. And Ducho was there with a tanker. And Rinpoche said it was horrible. But he sees the potential in him. He said, great, bravo, bravissimo. Will you paint me another? And he gave him he commissioned the Palden Lama. Is that right, Ducho? So he said, go and paint Palden Lama. And Ducho, he was like, wow, Lama asked him to paint another tanker. And the second time, and Rinpoche said it wasn't as bad as the first tanker, but it was it was Maitreya, but it wasn't anything to write home about. I can't hear. Sorry. So I put a kind of mini skirt on this Maitreya. So, Lama. And I'll translate this in a bit, but basically saying that Rinpoche, I'd done a very silly tanka, but Lama Ganshin said it was fantastic. Ducha has just told us that, because I'll repeat for those who are online. Ducha made many mistakes, but Rinpoche said, brava, fantastic. And gradually, Ducha got better and better. And the painting that he had right next to his bed was made by Ducha. So it's an example that Rinpoche, we should always relate to the qualities of people. He invested in energies of people, and they didn't improve. The normal reaction would have been to say, I gave you this advice, I gave you all this help, and they didn't improve. But Rinpoche wasn't like this. The point is to interact with the qualities of the other person, not look for their defects. We have an opposite tendency. We see somebody in front of us, but what do? We kind point a gun at them and shoot. He's good, but you tell me who doesn't have a bat. But we're constantly looking for defects. How often do I hear this? Yeah, nice bat. Ah, brava bat. We all have the bat. This is saying which says every madman has his theme. Everybody has their own. But when we learn to interact with the qualities of this and not to look for defects, that brings us into a much healthier way of interacting with other people. Atisha reminded us, don't be frightened to show your own defects, your own errors. At the same time, don't look for the defects in others. Hide any quality you may have. It doesn't, not in the sense, but our qualities are for us. We don't need to show them off to people. Our qualities should be self-evident. They don't need advertising. But how often we try to we advertise our own qualities. Why shouldn't we advertise our own qualities? Because when we do something good, when we start advertising, showing off, and to try and get a certain kind of recognition, then at that point we pollute this quality, and we start wanting to cultivate this because we want more recognition, and that's very dangerous. At the beginning, one wants to help because they have an open, good heart, but afterwards is no longer wants to help the other, but wants to be the person who's seen to help the others, because people recognizing the recognition for being a person who wants to help people. Do I want the happiness of the others, or do I want to be the person who helps others? It's not clear. One of the most dangerous points is into going to antinomic is wanting recognition. It's my own personal thing. I've got like a really big antenna for this. When I find somebody who wants somebody who wants recognition for something, I just can't help not giving them the recognition they seek in that moment, because it's something which is bad for that person. But we have to be very careful not to look to show off our qualities they should be self-evident.
E devono essere di beneficio
And they need to be
perché
of
sono,
benefit
non perché vengono
because they are, not because they're
per quello
recognized.
nascondi le tue
Therefore,
qualità,
hide your qualities
ma loda le buone qualità degli altri.
and
Cerca le qualità negli altri,
and
connettiti con le qualità degli altri, loda le qualità degli altri.
and laud the qualities of other people, praise
Questo
other
ci
people for
permette
their
di
qualities,
connetterci con le qualità.
and this helps us to connect with their qualities.
Vi invito a fare un esercizio.
I invite you to do this
E con
exercise,
questo concludiamo.
and with this we'll conclude the day.
Sarebbe meglio non criticare,
It would be better not to criticize, okay?
però
But
è chiedere troppo di dire smetti di criticare.
it's asking a bit too much to say don't criticize anymore,
Perché è un'abitudine molto forte in tanti di noi.
because it's a very strong habit in all of
Cerchiamo di
us.
fare una cosa. Ogni
Let's try
qualvolta
and do this instead.
che
Every now and
scopriamo
again
che
that we
stiamo
find
criticando qualcuno,
when we're about to criticize somebody,
dobbiamo dopo
we should
lodare almeno due qualità della persona.
we should then praise the person for two qualities they have.
Connetterci con qualcosa di
Connect
buono di quella persona.
with two good things about that person or that situation.
Non solo le persone,
Not only the
anche i
people,
governi.
government. Ooh.
Vedi che perché no?
Why not?
Io non voglio toccare un punto debole,
I don't want to touch a sore spot,
ma perché lo dico?
but why do I say this?
Perché la nostra
Because our
tendenza è
tendency
entrare in
is
un
to
gioco di
enter
attrazione e avversione.
into a game of aversion and attraction to generalize.
Invece dobbiamo avere un
Instead, we
pochettino di obiettività.
should have a little bit of objectivity
Questo
that this
non va bene. Che cosa?
is not
Questa
good.
scelta,
This choice is
questa
not good. This
direzione,
direction,
questa legge,
this
questa cosa
law,
non mi piace.
I don't
Quell'altra
like,
invece mi sembra
but
buona.
this other one is good.
Dobbiamo avere la capacità di distinguere una cosa dall'altra.
We should be able to distinguish one thing from the other, the positive aspect.
Perché se no
Otherwise,
è molto facile
it's very
metterci
easy
in questa
to
posizione di
put ourselves in a position,
contro
we always put ourselves against everything that confronts us.
Sinceramente,
Sincerely,
critica qualcuno semplicemente perché c'è avversione o
because
quella cosa,
somebody who criticizes,
dare della critica non è una critica costruttiva.
somebody who criticizes the other just because he has this version, it's not,
Invece quando
can't be trusted. It's because it's based on an internal state of aversion.
di vedere quelli che secondo noi vanno bene e anche andare a
So we should try and look for good qualities in the person.
una cosa importante.
It's an important thing.
Questo mi fa venire in mente
This reminds me of
esisteva un grande
there was
rispetto verso il nemico.
a great respect towards
C'erano dei
the enemy.
guerrieri, eccetera,
There were
c'erano dei nemici
warriors who were enemies, but there was a mutual
uno era il nemico, ma
respect.
sapeva anche lodare le sue qualità.
So he was an enemy, but you could also laud his qualities. Well, obviously, it's better not to have
Però cerchiamo di fare
enemies.
questo esercizio.
But let's try and do this exercise. And if we don't want to look for their qualities, let's not criticize. Okay.
In questi tre versi che abbiamo
In these 3 verses that we've seen,
tanto da praticare.
we have a lot to practice.
Quello che io vi invito a fare
What I invite you to do is to read today,
ricordatevi se c'è
remind
qualcosa
yourselves
qua che
if there's something that
veramente di più,
strikes you, try to memorize it. It's not that difficult.
omaggio alla grande compassione,
Well, homage to the great compassion, homage to the great masters, homage to the deities who inspire devotion.
abbandona ogni dubbio ed
Put aside all doubt and hesitation and take delight in earnest practice. Abandon entirely lethargy, dullness and laziness and exert yourself constantly with enthusiasm. With mindful recollection, vigilance and conscientiousness, guard the doors of your senses at all time. Again and again, thrice by day and by night, examine the continuum of your mind. Proclaim your own failings, but do not look for faults in others. Hide any good qualities you may have while declaring others' virtues.
come possiamo vedere sono cose facili da capire.
as we can see, there's easier things which are easy to understand but need to be applied. We need to keep them close to us as guidelines in our life. Let's make dedications for today. Shi Amkatrila Chachu Gyapada Matang Dam Guru Mandalam Kamiriyataya Sandelek Yang Delek Shi Yitzen Taktu Lekpe Konchon Sungi Chingilo Chon Sungi Alava, at dawn, at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our life with many signs of auspiciousness. Senchu Sutra, Lam Sutra, Lam La Parche, Yawashan. May the mind become Dharma. May Dharma become the path. May the path become free from interferences. Tashidale. Thanks to everyone. See you tomorrow.